Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. And this is Barbara serving as your host today. And there are others joining in here today. And Zahn is also here as a co-host. And I just want to welcome everyone to our conference call. And today, our Torah study, we are in Leviticus 25 on the Mount. So we are going to be discussing the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath, and then, the Shemitah, the 7-year, and then the 50 year, the Jubilee. Those are all his Sabbaths. So this is where we're at right now, and I just want to say the sabbatical year. Okay, well, John, would you like to just read that scripture right here, Leviticus 25? And it's through 1 to 7, and she uses the Hebrew name. You can skip over. This is for people that want to use the other name. You don't have to say both names. Just go ahead.
Sure. Leviticus 25, verse 1 through 7. And Yahweh spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to Yahweh. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. What grows of its own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your unintended vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. And the Sabbath produce of the land shall be food for you, your male and female servants, your hired man, and the stranger who dwells with you, for your livestock and the beasts that are in your land. All its produce shall be for food."
Okay, so the sabbatical year follows the pattern that was given at the beginning of creation when Elohim worked the 6 days and rested the 7th day. In Genesis 2, 2 to 3, it says, "And on the 7th day Elohim ended or completed his work which he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. Then Elohim blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which Elohim had created and made. He fulfilled." And ended. Ended in Strong's Hebrew is the word H3615, kala, meaning to end or subdue, bring something to its completion. And kala word is very close to the Hebrew word for bride, H3618, kala. And we've been studying about the bride with studying the book of Leviticus, getting the bride ready. And that would be us. And rested is Strong's Hebrew word H7673, Shabbat, Sabbath, meaning to cease from work or activity in order to rest or celebration. So these two words speak of restoration, as keeping the Sabbath restores and realigns the heart of the bride back in fellowship with her Creator, enjoying the intervals of Sabbath rest in him as his pattern all through his word. Resting in his principles is called faith. And faith is the trusting, fellowshipping, and abiding in his word, both in the assurance or faith that he will provide for our every need, and in the confidence, belief, that he will faithfully fulfill his covenant to us. That understanding is the goal of our salvation. There's a lot of scriptures here. This is from Seatful Gleanings. And I want to encourage everybody that's here in our fellowship group today, if you want to come in and make a comment, please come in the Q&A. You don't have to wait for me to pause or ask a question or comment. Just come in, and we want to hear from you too. We want it to be interactive, and I want to hear your voices and your opinions. So what is the Sabbath? Zahn, would you read these two scriptures? I'm not hearing you. You might be muted.
Yes, I did it again. Thank you. Let's see. We're starting with Exodus chapter 31, verses 16 through 17. And it reads, "Therefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed." Exodus 34 through 21 reads, 6 days you shall work, but on the seventh day you shall rest. In plowing time and in harvest you shall rest.
Yeah, it's a Sabbath rest. So, Zon, I'm going to go over to Dwayne, so you'll have to come back in the Q&A. Thank you, Dwayne. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I got a question. I think somebody asked this in the chat too. When's the next land Sabbath? I think there was one about 2 years ago, but I'm not positive.
Oh, okay. Sometimes we see it differently because some people may have seen it 2 years ago. Sometimes we're not all together on that because, we're not in the land anymore and we've lost track of it. We've been in exile over here in America, plus Israel had been in exile for hundreds of years and thousands of years, I guess. So we don't know for sure. But that's a really good question. When is the land rest? The 7th year. And we're here in America. When I grew up, the farmers were across the field. The farmers were on the way to church. It was all about farming. People had 50 acres or 100 acres. They didn't have thousands of acres. But they let their land rest every 7 years. There was nothing planted in their fields. And they were going by the biblical law, and they had healthy, good crops that way. And so I just think it's wonderful. But I don't know about nowadays with all the seed being altered, and I don't know if they respect the land at all anymore.
Okay, so you basically have to rely on whatever the Jewish scholar, the rabbis say that whatever the land jubilee year is going to be.
Or you can keep track of it yourself. I remember Ellie was keeping track of it with her garden, and sometimes when you have like a triple yielding on your grapes and on your plants and things, you go, I wonder if this was a Jubilee year or this is a Shemitah year and the next year, because we don't know. We're not in the land. But that's an excellent question, Dwayne. And then we do have a couple here. Good. Vong is here and Ellie. And stand by is on. Okay, Vong, go ahead.
I think there might be a clue in the stars and the moon eclipses, but the stars also, they'll give a sign when the land rests. I just noticed their pattern, but I haven't really knocked it out yet.
Oh, that is very good. So we can tell in the heavens if there's a land rest, if we know the signs. That's great. Thank you, Vong. I guess we have so much to learn. I don't know how to do it. Okay, Ellie is next. Go ahead, Ellie.
I don't have a question, Barbie. I did keep a Sabbath rest on my land back in 21 to 22, and I can't remember whether it was because Israel did it or not, but it was very interesting. I didn't plant anything. I think that was the year Abby was here. I didn't plant anything, but I know you remember, Abby. We had thousands of tomatoes that came up anyway. But yeah, that's when I left it. And so for 7 years for me, the next one would be, what would it be, 28 to 29, the year 28 to 29, somewhere in there. Anyway, I did keep it.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Yeah. And I think that's so healthy for our ground, and so healthy for our plants. And that's why all these things in the scripture are for our benefit and for our families and our food and our subsistence. Okay, and if anybody, if you have a comment or a question, just anything that we're talking about, to just jump in the Q&A. We don't have to cover a certain amount of material here. We're just in study together. Okay, Daniel and Tanya. Go ahead, Daniel.
Hey, y'all bless everybody. This is Daniel, and it was a couple of things that I noticed here. First of all, and you just touched on it, Barbara, about the significance of that seventh year yielding a triple crop, and that was the thing that, because I tied that in with the Jubilee year, because the 7 times 7 plus that 1 year, he didn't just give 2 years, but he gave 3 years. So it will be sufficient to sustain us until the next crop actually came into harvest. But the other thing that I connected here, and this is a little off topic, but I looked at how people confuse that counting with the counting to Pentecost, because they're using that same formula of 7 times 7 plus 1 to do that, and that just jumped out at me for some reason today. I figured how a lot of people without diligent study could fall into that little crevice. So I just wanted to make that comment. So thanks for letting me have some input.
I'm glad that you got on there, Daniel, and said that. Yeah, you can notice sometimes that triple crop and the 3 years. And we have also used that example because people say, the time of manna in the wilderness. If there was a double portion on the preparation day for Sabbath, was there a triple portion on a new moon coming up? We just don't know those things. But we did do a YouTube about that is a possibility. Or maybe they fasted, or maybe there was a triple portion. We don't know those things. But we have the example of the shmita and the Jubilee. We have an example, don't we? Okay, Ruby? Go ahead, Ruby.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay. I had attended an assembly of Yahweh before, where the people came out of the Church of God, and the Church of God had started keeping the feast, and whenever they were baptized, the preacher would say to the person who got baptized, "This is your sabbatical year." And so everybody in the congregation had a different sabbatical year, like every 7 years. But that's not the way it was done in the Bible. Everybody was observing the exact same 7th year. And there's a blessing for keeping Yahuwah's laws and a curse for not keeping them. If you had pests that, like cabbage worms or whatever, and nobody in the whole land was growing cabbage, then when the cabbage butterflies woke up, or the worms woke up and they wanted to find cabbage to eat, there wouldn't be any because nobody would have planted it. And so that would be a natural means of bug control, a safe way. That's all I had to say.
That's awesome, Ellie. That's really interesting. Yeah, it would be a natural way of keeping the locust or the cabbage leaf or whatever is growing. Natural way of keeping it, of creation taking care of itself like nature does. It's really beautiful. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, this was Ruby. Mm-hmm.
I meant Ruby. Oh, that's right. I'm looking at your last name on there. It's close to Ellie. Ruby, yeah. Thank you, Ruby. Okay, and Ezra has a comment, or it doesn't have to be a question. Definitely comments are welcome. But I don't have all the answers here either. I'm always learning too.
Yes, we all must be learning. And also go over and over again what we have been reading, especially when Moses answered Pharaoh that he will not leave a hoof behind. That means all the animals that they have been keeping for the hundreds of years they were in slavery in Egypt, they have to bring across. And there are millions of animals that they have to herd across the Red Sea and to go round through Elim and also stationed to fight with the Amalekites, and they have to secure the animals, and also that the rock that split into two to help release water to them will also help to release water to all the animals, and they're expected to make sacrifices on the feast days, and also the feast day meaning the new moon days. They are feast days, and so there is no need to eat manna because they will be roasting cows and lambs and what have you, and even they have been hunting around, and they have been killing the kudu deers and taking off their horns to make shofars. They have great ability to hunt too in the desert wilderness area where there are animals roaming around. So there is no need to expect to collect manna for 3 days because they will be all meat eating during the feast days, especially the new moons. And there's no need to fast because they only proclaim fast for the Day of Atonement or certain days where people are sick and they need to fast and to get healed through the fasting. But other than that, I'm sure that they all have been feasting because new moon days are feast days. They're meat eaters. They're not known to be vegetarians. Right?
I see what you're saying. Yes, new moon day is a feast day. It's not a fast day. So some people say fast, some say feast, but yes, it's a feast. Yes, it is.
Indeed, they've been eating lots of meat. And now that they have found the carol, where the carol is L-shaped in Mount Sinai area, so that the animals that are queuing to go for the slaughter will not feel so pressurized because they can't see over the L shape, the cornering. So it's okay. There are lots of jobs for the Levites to do because they are the butchers of those days, and because they butchered the whole city of Hamor along with Simeon. So Levites are butchers. So anyway, they're all meat eaters. Shalom, shalom. That's just my comment and my observation, and also my remembering Moses say, "We'll not leave a hoof behind." And so there are lots of animals that they're breeding for the 40 years too, journeying through the wilderness for 40 years. They're breeding animals and also hunting for the kudu deers. Shalom, shalom.
Oh, okay, yes. They had water from the rock. All those animals had to be watered and they had to be fed. That was a big responsibility. The people would have been a big responsibility, but just taking care of one animal. I have one little puppy now. That's a lot of work and a lot of responsibility. I can't imagine having thousands and millions of animals and millions of people. Okay, if you have anything, just come on in. This is just our conversation time. Let's see, Vaughn read these verses about the Sabbath. So if you have a comment or anything, this is our fellowship time. We don't have to cover a certain amount of the topic. So the seventh day, called the Sabbath, is an eternal covenant that unfolds profound blessings for all who will enter Elohim's rest on that day. Not only is the seventh day of the biblical month a weekly Sabbath rest for his people, but it also holds a prophetic picture of an eternal day. Remember, the 1,000 years are as a day. An eternal day when the believer eternally enters his rest. Ezekiel 45, 46, and Hebrews 4. So the Sabbath is like a seed that is concealed. It lays concealed until its appointed time. The seed's purpose is to develop other seeds, thereby producing after its kind. So the seed is a self-contained unit. All it needs is water, light, and good soil for it to germinate and come alive. In its appointed season, the seed is capable of yielding a crop, a 100-fold crop, just as a farmer planting a tomato seed can be sure that the plant coming forth from that seed will produce many pounds of tomatoes if planted in the right season and the right conditions. So too are the Sabbaths. So here are a couple of verses again. I'll just have Dawn, I got to go over there. If you would read that on to there.
Yes. Did you want me to start with the Exodus one or the Genesis one?
Exodus 16:29.
Excellent. See, for the Lord Yahweh has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. In Genesis 2, verses 1 through 3 reads, Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished. And on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. Then Elohim blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which Elohim had created and made.
Okay, so we're talking about the seed, how it has the capability to produce 100-fold, and this writer says, again, the Sabbath is like the seed. It contains everything needed to produce after its kind. Thus, the Sabbath is a completed work. And I think Abby has a comment, so I'm happy whenever I see anybody in here in the Q&A. So, good. Abby and then Craig.
I just wanted to make a comment that I heard from a rabbi last week about Torah portion, this portion here, saying that during the shmita, or even with the Jubilee, so if in case you go hungry or you run out of food, you are welcome to pick some from your neighbor, because you know, your yard, your garden is for the animals and for the hungry. And so everybody's doing that at that year. And then whoever is hungry can go pick for your, to your right or to your left and pick some of the food if they have, and if you run out of food. So that is really beautiful, how beautiful that is.
Yeah, that's beautiful to share and have it open and welcome for others that need it. Thank you, Abby. I appreciate each one of you coming into this study, and we can study together. This is not one person reading. It's a study for all of us. Go ahead, Brother Craig.
I just wanted to say thank you for the study. It was a great study today. We need to not lose sight of the significance of the shmita. You know, there are a number of applications here that we haven't really touched on. One of them is, as Abby just said, to care for the poor. Remember a couple of Torah studies ago we did that, where you didn't harvest all your land, but you left the external portions for the poor. Here in the Shemitah year, you're not to harvest anything. Anything that comes up is free for everyone to use. Is one of the significant portions of this Shemitah year. But another one is, in fact, the faith aspect. Remember, the Israelites were agrarian society, which means they lived off the land. That's how they made their money and how they ate their food. So for them, it was especially significant in not in leaving their fields fallow for a whole year, because they had to trust in God. And I think that's the principle we need to learn. Now, for us living, say, in America, we don't necessarily have to observe the Shemitah year unless you particularly want to. But there are other significant facts that we can observe, and that is to have faith and to trust in Yah's provision, because he provided food in the 6th year for 3 years, not just for the 1 year that you lose food. So he abundantly provides for you, but you've got to believe him. You've got to trust him. And that's the fact that we need to take hold of, is to trust God Also, the farmers in that year, they didn't farm the land. So what did they do? Instead of farming the land, they spent their time getting closer to Yah, worshiping Him. And we need to use the same. If we don't farm land today, we need to spend a Shemitah year, especially drawing close to Yah and taking His principles in the Shemitah and applying them to our lives here. That's just, I won't say any more. That's enough for today.
Whoops, I'm sorry. Could you guys, was I muted or not? I don't know now. Let's see. Ellie, I saw you for a minute. Did you guys hear what I was saying? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ellie. I was talking for a little bit, and then I thought, was I muted?
Yeah, you were muted, Barbie. That's what I was trying to tell you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was saying the faith aspect is so great for farmers because, you just think if that's, say we were over here in America, we had to wait the 3 years, and we had, you had to have the corn would have to be enough to get by with your family, plus enough to plant when the years were up, the waiting years were over, so that would really be hard. So thank you, Ellie, for letting me know. And I had it muted because my dog made a little whimper, and so I got my puppy here with me. But yeah, and the time to worship, that's really beautiful because the farmers, from morning till way in the night, they're so busy farming and hoeing and watering, and it would be a great respite time to become close to Yah, the Creator, again. And having faith and just a time to rest for us. It's a Sabbath rest for the farmers because they work so hard. I just love that part of it, Brother Craig. Okay, I guess we'll go a little further. And okay, Zahn. Okay, Zahn is back. Good. Did you have any comments, Zahn? Or are you here to be with me?
I'm here to be with you, yes. But I did, let me grab one thing here for those that are on the phone and maybe can't see everything that's in the chat. Craig had pointed out also in the chat that the next Shemitah year is termed as 5789, I think, for the Jewish people. And I think that correlates with 28 to 29 in Gregorian years. So he's got it listed as September 2028 to September 2029. So, and the way I kind of deal with the Shemitah, with using that timeline that Ellie and Craig are in kind of an agreement there on, is I think I looked it up last in 2021, and at that time it was 5781. So what I'm finding is 5781 2021. If we're looking at 5789, then it's going to be just lost my screen, the 2029. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense on how I'm kind of figuring that out and kind of trying to relate it to Gregorian time where we are now.
Okay, so we have a plan to go by. Ellie and Brother Craig have studied it out. What's the year of the Shemitah? And that was asked, I think, in the chat, too. What was the year of Shemitah? So thank you for all of that information. I'm not a farmer or anything, and I haven't even had much of a garden, so Okay, Ruby has a comment, and then Appa and Peggy. Go ahead, Ruby.
The seventh-day Sabbath is interrupted by the new moon, and I believe what you see on the small is what you see in the big, and so the year of Jubilee is what breaks up the 49 7 Sabbath years equaling 49. And if a person isn't observing the lunar Sabbath, they may not understand the year of Jubilee.
I like what you said. The seventh-day Sabbath is interrupted by the new moon, after 4 weeks. So that's really good. And it shows it also with our land rest. Okay, as is Appa, go ahead. For Peggy.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make just give a little bit of perspective from some of the things that I thought of when we're talking about the seventh year. Well, as we know, this the 19-year cycle. Not every year is not compatible with the 19-year. Every seventh year land rest is not really compatible with the 19-year cycle, which we know has been true ever since the time of it's been changed since the time of Hezekiah. So you can't start at year 1 in the 19-year cycle. If you started in year 1 in the 19-year cycle, it would start on year 2, the next 19-year cycle. So we know that it can't really work from that perspective. Then you're going to have to look at bigger timeline cycles behind that, and that gets really difficult to backtrack. I know the Jewish people have their year, but that's, of course, that would be taken into account how, somebody has to do a really deep dive study in order to, I feel like, to figure that out, and which they might have. And then there's also the present truth perspective. In the time of Moses, many Israelites were farmers. A lot of the people were in the land, got their inheritance, and and so a big majority of them were farmers and shepherds and things like that. So they were very connected to the land. Well, the world has been becoming increasingly complex over the years, and today farming only accounts for 1.2% of employment. So I would stress, like what Craig was talking about, that we need to focus on the principles, the spiritual principles, and of course, I think resting your land every 7 years is a very valuable. It's a valuable principle, and because it's scientifically proven that land does need rest after so many years, to help the little organisms in the land, or not in the land, in the soil, repopulate, and of course, for nourishment reasons. There's a lot of documentaries on that. But I just wanted to give a slightly different perspective on why, when we look at present truth, we look at farming and its employment today. And I'm not saying it's not relevant. I'm not saying it's not a law. I'm simply saying that it's a lot different than it was back then, and I think the principles need to be the main focus.
The principles, okay, the main focus. Yeah, because of the time of Hezekiah, things get off. But it's great to put an effort forward and to try to save our land by the things that we know will make the land more healthy. And most people have a garden, and like Ellie rested her garden, and others rest their gardens, and that's important, I think, because we have so much to fight against. We have all the pollution in the air and the pollution in the ground, and we just need to try to keep things as healthy as we can. Oh, I'm close to a train track here. You might hear the train here in Tennessee, where I'm at. Well, I hope you have some more comments, and we'll go forward. Let's see, maybe there's a little something down here I could get to. Oh, yeah, let's talk about Hebrews 4 a little bit. Okay, every time the bride of Yeshua enters into his appointed Sabbath, he or she receives a specific anointing. For example, if the 7-day Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the 7th-day Feast of Unleavened Bread, the beginning, the Aleph day, and the end day, the Tav day of this feast, as with the Feast of Tabernacles, are both appointed Sabbaths. These Sabbaths are preordained for specific purposes and contain what his people need at that precise time. Thus, what was prophesied to Abraham happened 400 years later with a certainty in the 4th generation on the same self day, Genesis 15, Exodus 12, and Galatians 3. So if Elohim's people participate in his Sabbaths, the Sabbath will hold a heavenly set, prearranged destiny for them, just as we see in the lives of the people mentioned in Hebrews 11. Oh, I love Hebrews 11, the faith chapter. So there we read of our forefathers all walking by faith. As Brother Craig mentioned, the faith aspect. It's a big faith aspect for us, but it was definitely for farmers and those that their life is from the ground and the land. So in Hebrews 11, we read of our forefathers all walking by faith. And I believe their faith was immobile, like a pillar, as they could see their future so clearly charted through the Sabbaths. Thus, their faith and their destiny were absolute and tangible. That is how Abraham and Moses were able to see the Messiah's day, the Lord of the Sabbath, or Master of the Sabbath, Yeshua in John 8:56 and Hebrews 11:26. But let's read Hebrews 4. I remember one time Ann asked about Hebrews 4 and the Sabbath rest. Could we talk about it? Could we study it a little? I think we did a little teaching on it one time. But here is Hebrews 4. And when people want to know about a Sabbath, I remember when trying to show people Sabbath, Saturday Sabbath in the Bible. There's a lot in the Old Testament, but you can always turn to Hebrews 4. Hebrews 4 talks about the Sabbath in the New Testament. So go ahead, Zahn. Thank you for coming back in for reading.
Yes, okay, there, I'm unmuted. Hebrews 4, verse 1 through 11. Therefore, since a prophesied promise remains of entering his rest, Sabbath, let us believers fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it as in the Sabbath. For indeed the gospel was preached to us as well as to them at Mount Sinai, but the word which they, the children of Israel, heard did not profit them, not being mixed with faith, belief, and those who heard it. For we, believers in the God of Abraham, who have believed, do enter the rest, Sabbath. As he has said, so I swore in my wrath, thou shalt not enter my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he has spoken in a certain place of the 7th day, the Sabbath, in this way. And Elohim rested on the 7th day from all his works. And again in this place, they shall not enter my rest, the Sabbath. Since therefore it remains that some must enter it, and those to whom it was first preached did not enter because of disobedience, again he designates a certain day, saying in David, today. After such a long time it has been said, today if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, then he would not afterward have spoken of another day, the Sabbath of Shmi Azret, eternity. There remains therefore a rest for the people of Elohim. For he, a believer who has entered his rest, the Sabbath, has himself also ceased from his works as Elohim did from his. Let us therefore be diligent to enter the rest, lest anyone fall according to the same example of disobedience.
You know, I think we talked about this last week too. We've been talking about the Sabbath and the rest and how our whole year is interrupted weekly by the Sabbath, and then in the yearly by the feast. And it's a time to look forward to, a time of rest. We can say, oh, Sabbath, oh, yay, Sabbath is coming, a time of rest, spiritually, mentally, and physically. And like Brother Craig said, it would be a time of rest to worship Yah with the Shemitah year, and time to not have to get out there and plow and do all the heavy labor. And it would have been a time of rest for the animals, too. So, okay, well, I'm happy Brother Gabriel is here and Brother Craig. Go ahead, Brother Gabriel.
Shalom, everyone. Happy to be here with you. The reason that I am here is that I want to clarify with you an unintentional mistake that I did in one of my presentations. So, Sister Barbara, if you want to put for us Deuteronomy 16:1, I discovered something that unintentionally I presented to you, and I want to discuss it with you. And I consider that this argument that we will discuss together should not be used. So let's go into it. So we read in Deuteronomy 16:1 the last part, which says, "Brought thee forth out of Egypt by night." So my interpretation in that presentation was that Israel, excuse me, observed the Passover on the 14th at night. They consumed the lamb, and then they observed the Sabbath, and then they left. But I discovered Numbers chapter 33 verse 3, which says the opposite. And if you would like to put that Bible verse for us. So I think my interpretation was very wrong, unintentionally, and should not be used in defense of Sabbath observation, because many arguments are they kept or did not keep or they didn't keep the Sabbath on the 15th. So let's read this verse. I didn't know. So at that time, I didn't know about this Bible verse. So maybe I'm wrong, but I want your input, and we need to discuss this. So we read, "They departed from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow after the Passover." So if the Passover took place on the 15th night, they consumed the lamb and they left immediately, according with this new revelation that I have, or we see together. So I don't know if for some of us can be an issue. I don't see it an issue, but I want you to know of the existence of this verse, which is makes this my message. Basically, it was wrong. Or give me your explanation, please. I don't know what to say.
Okay, Gabriel, I'm hearing some piano or music too in your background, but okay. I understand what you're saying. But when you, the 14th, when you find that the day begins at dawn, yes, they kept the Passover the 14th at night. The dawn of the 15th started Sabbath. The dawn of the 15th started the Sabbath. And I believe the Sabbath hours are over at the dark of the 15th, and it was the night of the 15th that they left. So they and he did bring them out at night. They traveled a lot at night, but they came out. That this proves the Sabbath, the 15th, because it was a day after the Passover. Numbers 33:3 is really important. And they come out the day after, the morrow after the Sabbath at night. And this verse helps prove that a day starts in the morning, because if you don't think the day starts in the morning, then this really can disprove your Sabbath teaching. But Passover was the 14th at night. It
Exactly.
in the evening, yes.
And
so,
they left immediately on the morrow after the Passover, because that's the part that I was confused about it. I thought that they will rest for the Sabbath, but basically the verse, it says on the 14th night they celebrate the Passover, nothing to be left till the morning. And in Exodus 12:29, it says after the midnight also. And I don't know, I don't want to bring confusion to you. No, I think and you know, I talked to other people, other suggestions said, well, is nothing wrong to be saved during the Sabbath, which is true. I really believe that is nothing wrong. They didn't work. But I don't want to add anything extra, but from my point of view, they left very early on the 15th, according with this verse, on the morrow after the Passover.
Because Deuteronomy 16:1 says they went at night.
At night.
I use these two verses a lot. Deuteronomy 16:1 says they went at night, and Numbers 33:3 says the 15th. So they went on the 15th at night, because at night on the 14th was Passover, and at night on the 15th is when they left. And it was full moon, and they went out in the sight of everyone.
Well,
so you did right. This is the way I believe it. It's just if you think the Sabbath started at dark on the 14th, then people would think they traveled. They would think the dates were wrong. But no, the Passover date of the 14th does not end till the dawn, and at the dawn the 15th begins. And at night of the 15th is when they left. And those two verses prove it. So you did.
Yeah, I didn't know about the existence of this verse, which I don't know.
Yeah, these two verses go together. They go together, and they show you. They left at night, and they left on the 15th. So they help prove the Sabbath. It's just if you come from the Adventist like I did, or the Jewish background of Sabbath beginning at sundown, then you would think, well, they ate their meal on the 14th and then it was Sabbath. But that's not how it went. All the dark night of the 14th was Passover. The dawn of the 15th was Sabbath. So very good. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's an excellent study, and we can go over it more another time. And I'm really glad you were here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. And Craig is here, and Dwayne. So we have time for a few comments. Go ahead.
One other thing quickly, that is the word renewal or rest. Both the land needs renewal or rest so that the seeds can produce more during that fallow year. And also we need renewal and rest ourselves on the Sabbath day and the Shemitah year. We need to rest and be renewed, be reinvigorated with Yahuwah's presence, so that we can be fruitful, more fruitful in the next year. So that's just my little thought to end that on the Shemitah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Brother Craig. Back to the topic of the Shemitah and the Sabbath year, that the seeds are more fruitful if they rest, and we're more fruitful if we rest. I mean, you can get pretty grumpy if you keep going day after day, week after week, which is what the world does. They don't rest on their Sunday or any day, but it's been proven people live longer if they rest one day a week, and that's why the Creator gave us that day for renewal. Thank you for bringing that out. And Dwayne is here, and Sister M. Okay, go ahead, Dwayne.
Okay, the guy that was talking about Deuteronomy and Numbers.
Right.
I always was confused about that too, because it says that they left at night, and then it says in Numbers that they left before the eyes of everybody. But then I never considered that they left at the time of the full moon. So, and I've been in that part of the world in the desert at night, and when there's a full moon, and it's pretty bright.
Okay.
So everybody would have been able to see them if they left at night. And then the other thing that got me was if they left in the day on the 15th on the Sabbath, the thing about taking a journey, walking on the Sabbath, but there's, as far as I know, I don't know of any scripture that prohibits walking on the Sabbath, and then for Sabbath keepers, whether you keep Saturday or Sunday or Creator's calendar Sabbath, a lot of people will travel miles to go to a meeting place. So it's I don't know. I just kind of think it's probably pretty much the way that it says that they left before the eyes of all the Mitzrayites, because it was a full moon and everybody could see them. And in Deuteronomy it says that they left that night. So it's once I came to understand that, it wasn't such a big deal anymore. It pretty much was kind of explanatory, I guess.
I think, and that's why it's important to know when the day begins. And at first I didn't want to hear those teachings, but this is one of the times when it's important to know when a day begins, to show when Passover ended, they were to stay in there till morning, they were not to leave, and then the Sabbath would begin at day. So and the walking on the Sabbath, we know that Yeshua walked through the fields, and he took a handful of grain and rolled it around his hand and ate it, and they accused him of walking and eating and harvesting and everything on the Sabbath. But I think it's an individual thing, how much you want to do on Sabbath. You want to go for a 5-mile hike or want to drive 100 miles to a meeting. I think those are individual things. We know the Pharisees had a rule of you couldn't go more than like 200 feet, and they would take their belongings, I think, like the day before the Sabbath, and put some bedding or something 200 feet away under that tree, and then they could say that was their place of home or whatever, and then they could pick it up and go another 200 feet. I don't know, something like that. So we're not Pharisaical, but Sabbath was made for us. And I think if I had to walk all day, I would be exhausted. It wouldn't be a rest day for me. Thank you for that. And Sister M, and then Roberta.
Hi, this is Sister M. I think Dwayne made a good point. They left at night. In some verses says they left at midnight because the Pharaoh was, the Egyptians were saying, we're dying here. You gotta go. You gotta go now. And so I think that was Passover night. And if they walked during the whole night, then like you said, you brought a good point that Sabbath starts in the morning. Maybe they stopped in the morning. I think those are good points. I think it's a valid thing to consider. Also, what I believe is, deliverance is great on the Sabbath. There's nothing wrong with that, in my perception, but thank you for allowing us to share this, Barbara.
Okay, Sister M, I'm always happy you're here. And we know that Pharaoh told Moses said, "You will not see my face again." So when you study it out, he sent servants down. He didn't actually see them to their face to say, "Get out of the land." So that's a whole nother study too. But Moses did not see his Pharaoh's face again. It was messengers sent to leave. So okay, and Ruby? Roberta, sorry. Got my R's mixed up.
No problem. No problem. How you doing, Barbie? Yeah. I was thinking on the lines of, okay, if the Sabbath began at sunrise, and if you do the 12-hour Sabbath or the Sabbath from sunrise to sundown, on that 15th, the Sabbath would have been over with by the time Israelites left out of Egypt, because they left out at night. So that could be something to consider, that on a 12-hour day Sabbath, or a Sabbath that ends when the sun goes down, then when they left, Sabbath was over on the 15th.
Yes, that's what I believe too. And I'm glad Brother Gabriel brought that up, because you're going to run into that, and we need to have discussions about it, because it actually helps prove the Sabbath is on the 15th. And the holy hours for me, it says, Exodus 20, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And it doesn't say the Sabbath night, but we know it's like a 24-hour date. The date of the Sabbath today is, this date began at dawn, and the date won't change to the 30th. We're on the 22nd day, sorry. The date won't change till dawn. Then it will be the next day. But this is the date of the Sabbath. But for me, my Sabbath hours will end at darkness. So thank you, Roberta. And each person needs to study for themselves and decide for themselves these things too. Well, I'm glad for everybody's comments, and we can stick around longer. If you come in the Q&A, we are happy to hear from you. Okay, it looks like Daniel's here and Sister M again. Go ahead.
This is Tanya asking the question this time. Hi everyone, Shabbat Shalom. In our the congregation we came before, we didn't use the darkness, we used the sunset. So I'm learning here. So what is the proper time for the ending of the Sabbath, and where's the scripture? So I'm learning. I just need some help on that. Thank you.
Well, sunset is what I know. I'm fourth generation Adventist, and we knew exactly when it was 5:27 that was in the Review and Herald, because my dad made us stick to that minute, and we couldn't wait till 5:30 in the evening in the winter for Sabbath to be over. So, I was taught sundown is sundown. But for me, it's sundown, but I don't go look for minutes. I just know when it's dark, like the chickens and all in nature knows when it's dark. I don't like to go exactly by the minutes, because I kind of grew up that way. And my cousin, she had strict parents too. Her mom and my dad were from the same group of people, the same family. And she said they always set their alarm clock. She was a teenager too. They set their alarm clock for when sundown was over. And then they could begin their day and have their freedom again. So we grew up in very, very unhealthy Sabbath environments. But okay, Sister Ann, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what did Roberta say? Because I missed what she said. I'm sorry.
Roberta said there's a 12-hour day, 12 hours from sunrise to sundown. And, in the winter it's shorter because of the sundial. You would see a shorter 12-hour period on a sundial. And then in the summer, it's longer. It wouldn't be an actual 12 hours like on our worldly clock, because we have a lot more daylight time. So it would be when Yeshua said in John 11:9, there's 12 hours in a day, he was saying 12 hours on that sundial, because it's much shorter in the winter and longer in the summer. And she was saying that sunrise to sundown is the 12-hour day. And then at the sundown would be the beginning when holy Sabbath hours were over, but it's still part of that date.
Well, it seems like, doesn't it seem like there's a verse, Deuteronomy says they left at night, but Numbers says they left in the morrow.
Yeah, it would be the morrow the morrow after Passover is the 15th. That's the next day. But Deuteronomy proves that it was at night. It was on the morrow. Okay, say it's today or last, I don't know, the 22nd actually, but if the Passover was last night, this morning at dawn was Sabbath. They left at night. They left after the Sabbath hours on the 15th. So with those two...
Then why did... It seemed like they left like in the middle of the night of Pesach, because they were told to keep their shoes on, right, and their staff in their hand, and they left with the bread not even baked. I think they left midnight, Passover midnight.
Well, that's a good point, Sister M, but the death angel passed over at midnight. They were told, do not leave your homes until morning. They were not to leave the home. They were not to go out of the door until morning. It's very strict there in Exodus.
So if they were left in the morning then?
Well, it's the morrow after the Sabbath, so it could have been any time.
To keep their sandals on and have their staff in, like they were going to leave in haste, it seemed like.
Yep, ready.
So is just a little bit of confusion with those verses. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right. But it did say between the two verses, we know the day they left, and we know the time they left. Because Numbers 33 says the date was the 15th, and then Deuteronomy 16:1 tells you the time they left. So it was the date of the 15th, and the time was at night. But those are really good comments and questions and thoughts. So I'm not trying to, I'm just...
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. We appreciate it, because it does say, it says midnight. That's when the death angel passed over, but when you read it carefully, it says, do not go out till morning. And
but then
so
they left at night. It says they left at night, though.
Right, on the 15th, because when you use the two verses, it says they left on the 15th at night.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very good, very good. And we know that Moses couldn't go see Pharaoh because they were told not to leave till morning, not to go out of their houses till morning. So they had their sandals on, staff in hand, but they still, I don't know. I know they didn't leave till night. I don't know. They had some things to get together, I guess. I don't know how much they did that Sabbath day. Okay, Brother Craig?
Yeah, I agree with you, Bobby. I think you have to read all those verses together to get an understanding. And if you don't have all the verses, like Brother Gabriel had just said earlier on, then you get a skewed understanding of it. You have to read all the verses together to get a good understanding. And my second point is just a little nuance that I had to de-learn is the Sabbath. If you're keeping a 12-hour Sabbath, it is from, according to World's Last Chance as well, it is from the first observance of light. So it is from dawn to dusk. The last slivers of light end the Sabbath at dusk time. So it's not from sunrise to sunset, because that may be an hour away from dawn to dusk. So that's another subtlety. That's how I observe the Shabbat, is from dawn to dusk. The first visible appearance of light to the last visible appearance of light is the 12-hour day for me, or close to 12 hours, depending on the season. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Craig. I appreciate that. Okay, Dwayne, and then Abby.
I just wanted to comment on that lady about the when they left Egypt.
Okay.
You got also there's one part in there too. They spoiled the Egyptians. So I don't know how they did it, but I'm presuming on the 15th, the Egyptians brought them their jewelry and whatnot, and then when they left, they left in haste, because one reason would be you wouldn't want to be around in case the Egyptians changed their mind and wanted their stuff back. So yeah, they also, like she said, they left in haste, and that's just what I wanted to say.
Okay, in haste. Well, we know when Yah told Moses how this was all going to happen, he said they were to go and ask for things from the Egyptians, and this was way before all the plagues. We don't know as the plagues were happening how much more they collected, but we know that they were told ahead of time to collect from the Egyptians, because Yah told Moses this is what's going to happen, and they were to go and to gather from the Egyptians. And so it didn't all happen on Sabbath morning. They had already plundered the Egyptians, and I'm sure if all these plagues were happening and you had gold or clothing or whatever, you would be taking them over and say, here, will you pray to your God that we're protected? Or I don't know how it all happened, but they were told ahead of time to ask for those things. Okay, Abby?
Hi. I just wanted to emphasize, I know it's a difficult scripture to understand, but Sister Barbie makes sense in her effort to explain, because the Israelites will not violate their principles, or in other words, God's laws. So when they said, when it says, do not get out because the killing is going to happen at that night, they're not going to get out on the 14th night after they had their Passover celebration. So it doesn't make sense that they left at the 14th night. Now, they also would not violate walking during Sabbath, because even the Lord Yeshua says, pray that you have to flee not on the Sabbath, because they will not violate. So it just really makes sense to me that they fled at night after sundown on the 15th, which is the Sabbath day. After sundown of that day, they fled at that time. So when we interpret the scriptures, we need to really consider the principles, because it's so easy to be misled the way things are written in the Bible. Just like, with prophecy, how we interpret it, it's very difficult when we do not have that strong faith and sense or belief, or actually faith, that the testimony of Yahshua, the Lord Jesus, his testimony is the spirit of prophecy. That makes a big difference in the interpretation of the prophecy that is coming. And so we need to really consider these things. We need to line up who God is and who is Jesus. What was his testimony, and why we need to consider that in order to get the right interpretation for the prophecy. So that's all. I just wanted to share that with you guys. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Abby. And Robbie is back, and then we'll probably start closing pretty soon here. Go ahead, Robbie.
Okay. I was listening to everyone's comments. It's like putting a puzzle together. We know with all the scriptures, when you look at them, logically, the Israelites needed time to interact with the Egyptians to get all their goods, because they did not leave empty-handed. They got gold and other, valuable items and stuff from the Egyptians. So they wouldn't be accepting these things from the Egyptians during their Sabbath time. They would, do this after the Sabbath. So that just gives me more confirmation to believe that the Sabbath is over at sundown. And also, too, the Egyptians had animals. They had to get their animals together. They need time to get their animals together. And because it was like millions of them leaving. So they needed preparation time. And so they would have their Sabbath. It would be over at sundown, like the brother brought out, the last show of light. Once that's gone, then they would get their stuff. Either the Egyptians are bringing it to them, and then they have to pack all their stuff up, get the children ready, get the animals ready, and then get on out of there, in haste to leave Egypt. So I hope that makes sense to somebody else too. Thank you.
And the Egyptians were dealing with their dead. Every home was affected by the death of the firstborn. So I guess we'll end on this thought. I'm going to just close the recording. And for those of you, if I put this out on the YouTube channel, to find out more about when a day begins, we have a lot of YouTubes about it, YouTube videos, and we have articles about it on our website, lunarsabbathday.com. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and for those of you that are here in the group, stand by for our closing songs and thoughts. Whoops, closed. Whoops.